The NASCAR Truck Series on Friday did not disappoint when it comes to controversy, but according to some of the drivers, it was the absolute misery that the sport needs to get rid of as soon as possible. Friday's finale ended with a very emphatic Ben Rhodes being crowned as the two-time world champion, but Denny Hamlin had a lot to say about the rules that effectively poisoned the sport's nature. The anger of the JGR driver was visible and hearable, and he did not say any words when it comes to what should change in the foreseeable future. But the question is, will NASCAR turn a blind eye to his and his colleagues' requests? And if so, how will that affect the entire future of the Truck Series? Let's start off with the basics, more importantly, where it all started to go down in the last 31 laps of the race. Carson Hocevar, the number 42 car, trailed closely behind and made contact with Heim, the number 11 driver, and his Safelite truck. This caused Heim to spin out directly into Stuart Friesen, who unfortunately took most of the momentum from the wall and effectively allowed Heim to continue driving. The majority of the fans understood this, as if it weren't for Friesen acting like a buffer during the incident, Heim would have wrecked completely and wouldn't have been able to continue. But at the earlier stages of the race, Heim was given a true shot at the championship, but unfortunately he finished 18th. So in the final laps, he retaliated and shoved Hocevar into the outside wall, which then cost Grant Enfinger the title. Enfinger was visibly mad with everything that was going on in the race, as he went on to say, "Obviously Corey, retaliated, or whatever it was, against Hocevar. It's just incredibly disappointing to have our championship race come down to an absolute mess. Chaos mess." When the stakes are high, usually stuff like this tends to happen. But with such an amount of crashes and aftermaths, and with NASCAR not taking enough responsibility over what is actually going on the racetrack, the reactions from the drivers and the experts are definitely going to be like they are right now. For example, Matt Tifft took things to Twitter and wrote of the crash-filled finale, "This is an absolute embarrassment." We should not be surprised that it was exactly Hocevar who was involved in this entire scenario, as he has a track record of what the other elite drivers consider intentional hits. But he is still to receive a penalty for the setbacks other drivers incur. Denny Hamlin, for one, wants to see changes in how NASCAR penalizes drivers like Hocevar, and his rant just goes on and on against the sport. For starters, when talking to Fox Sports about this matter, he went on to say, "Some of these are blatant enough that you can see that someone hit someone else, and they kept pushing. Those are the types of incidents you just, penalize. I don't think NASCAR is ever going to make that change." However, many of the fans on social media were quick to point out that this is exactly how Hamlin drives, and there is no point of him comparing the driving style of another driver to his. And some of the comments said, "This is what people think Denny Hamlin does every week. Looks like they both graduated from the school of Hamlin racing." Heim and Tricon, however, were proud of what they achieved, and they said that they will be back in February even stronger, as the announcement came earlier this October that the relationship between these two will not be broken for the upcoming season. What hasn't been announced yet, however, is how the sport is going to act towards the current rules that are poised to ruin the fun and the racing element, because more likely than not, the fans that are already in a declining number are going to find the sport less intimidating and interesting to watch, and will turn around to some of the biggest competitors of NASCAR, such as Formula One or IndyCar 500. Elaborating on this matter even further, Hamlin did not save any words when explaining how the entire race went down and why it was such a disaster for the entire sport's reputation, adding, "The Truck Series, what a crap show that was. I mean, what a crap show. It was effing terrible. I don't know how else to put it. It was just not good. It was not a good look. Honestly, it's kind of old news now. We can kind of forget about it. But man, what a terrible precedent that set for how to race for a championship. And whatnot, just generally speaking about how guys drove each other. I don't know why they thought it's the last race, so I can just grind all my axes right here in this race." A lot of the wrecks weren't even some championship contender guys that are going for it. They are just a part-time guy wrecking a full-time guy, or a full-time guy wrecking a part-time guy. I just don't get it. They lost their brains. Maybe they watched the Xfinity race from the previous week and saw that it was okay, and now we're doing this on the regular, so yeah, just not a good look. I worry about the long-term stuff about if you do nothing about it. What Hamlin is saying definitely has the potential to ruin the reputation of the sport, but more importantly, it will result in something that NASCAR is desperately trying to fight off right now: the decrease of the current fan base and the lowered input of a new fan base. the sport has notched losing numbers as the 2023 finale wrapped up in Phoenix, and more likely than not, we are likely to see Formula One take over the reign in the USA with the new track in Las Vegas poised to be the greatest show ever made, although it has some cons as well. But one thing that NASCAR has failed to intervene in is that these types of crashes have happened in the higher series, such as the Xfinity and the Cup Series, and the drivers in the Truck Series may have seen a pattern of behavior that they are able to implement on their own and still run away without any penalty. So far, it has worked for Hocevar, but if NASCAR doesn't draw the line somewhere soon, then we are very likely to see incidents and crashes like this happen more often in the 2024 season. Hamlin has talked about this as the biggest fear of the sport, adding, "It's not just that series. We saw it in Xfinity. Same thing last week, then the Cup. I just mentioned it's going to happen in the Clash. Unless the adult, which is NASCAR, I'm calling them the adult, says to the children, no, that is not how you're supposed to do this. We're a professional stock car series, act accordingly." But since not all of the cases have the same anatomy of the crash, even though the nature is more or less the same, Hamlin feels like the best scenario would be that NASCAR needs to send drivers who wreck others on purpose to the rear, making it a case-by-case basis. It would narrow down to a judgment call that the other sports like balls and strikes in baseball have, and it's present in other motorsports categories as well. His proposal is very neat, and as one of the most experienced drivers in NASCAR, the sport might actually learn a thing or two and accept some of the good-natured things that he is offering, as he continued to speak. It's not going to be a regular occurrence, because when a driver realizes they'll have to go to the back and their race is over, they'll stop it. It's self-policing in that way. Instead, the old Bill France way, well, it'll self-police itself. That's what's happening out there. Someone's bumping someone, and then someone's taking it to the next level and wrecking the hell out of them. That's what's going on the track. That's self-policing. These guys aren't doing it for no reason. It's because that person might have ran them slightly up the track the lap before, so let's just crash them. Apart from that, Hamlin believes that the penalties need to be blatant and obvious, and they need to discourage the other drivers from purposefully committing to them, because if they are not of this nature, then we are not going to receive anything but calculations as to whether or not it's worth crashing at a certain point in the race. The point is obvious. It should not be allowed because the last thing that NASCAR needs right now in these times of losses is yet another issue that compromises its authority and its credibility as a sport. And apart from Hamlin, his teammate Martin Truex Jr. has also raised his concern about whether or not stuff like this should be penalized more heavily than they are right now. And Martin Truex Jr. said it best. The level of respect for the lower series in NASCAR has been plummeting for years, and what we've witnessed in the finale is just another addition to it. And it just leaves an open space as to where we are going to see this happening next, because obviously the sport is not doing anything to prevent it. Nonetheless, NASCAR has a lot of work on their hands ahead of the 2024 season, one that could be do or die for the sport. And with this in mind, what do you think will happen with NASCAR's penalties regarding incidents like the one we've witnessed on Friday? Let us know in the comments below.